When the Spaniards came to Mexico, what they really wanted was spiritual conquest.
Human sacrifice never came back, but many of the other rituals and ceremonies survived.
What's up guys, it's Jason here and welcome to my YouTube channel, Expat Insight. As you might know, I've published 2 other videos on Mexico, 20 things to know before moving to Mexico and 8 reasons why you should leave Mexico now. I've spent so many years in Mexico and I love deeply this amazing, polemic, and mysterious land. So I don't overwhelm the subject, this will be my last video on Mexico and it's on the 8 things that really make Mexico amazing in 2022. Besides the extremely varied and beautiful land itself, Mexico has diverse, strong people with a bloody history full of acts of heroism and sacrifice. Oh boy! And of course, the curious and sometimes terrible clash of civilizations. And you can't speak of Mexico without speaking of drug trafficking, which could not exist without deep corruption at the highest levels of government. Petroleum is also extremely important, but it is the culture, sports, food, music, and of course, the remarkable Olmec, Toltec, Mayan, and Aztec Empires. With this video, we'll examine the top 8 things that make Mexico unique and uniquely amazing in 2022. By the end, I guarantee you'll be an expert on Mexico. But first, if you wouldn't mind just tapping that like button for the YouTube algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. As this is a brand new channel I started this year, it helps me out a ton and it's free to do. If you love Mexican food, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for new videos each week. Thanks for doing that, and let's continue on with what makes Mexico amazing in 2022. Number 1. Food in Mexico. Once again, we learned from Wikipedia that, in 2005, Mexico presented the candidature of its gastronomy for World Heritage Site of UNESCO, being the first occasion in which a country had presented its gastronomic tradition for this purpose. And it is not hard to figure out why. Mexican food is simply awesome. Both for its variety and sheer good taste, Mexican food has been exported worldwide, and many variants and cheap imitations have tried to annex the popularity of Mexican dishes, like the traditional taco, to ride the wave of yumminess into the bank. Thank you, but no thank you, Taco Bell. Stop trying to pretend you are Mexican food. Intelligent Americans know that you can eat far better in any Mexican street corner than in actual restaurants. And the most iconic element in Mexican food is the tortilla, and the most iconic dish prepared with tortillas is the taco. Tortillas and tacos can be traced all the way back to pre-Hispanic Mexico, but tacos are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to delicious food. What about chocolate? Yep, chocolate was first used in Mexico. Avocados? Mexico. And then of course there is tequila. Some of the lesser-known delicacies can only be found by the bravest of anthropological gastronomic adventurers. Can you imagine how utterly mind-blowing it is to try chocolate-covered grasshoppers with hot chili peppers and avocado sauce? The god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent of old, is said to have gone to the land of the dead, Mictlan, to discover the secret of corn and the mexicas, which is how the Aztecs called themselves, hence the name Mexico, were therefore known as the people of the corn. Or perhaps the children of the corn. Sorry, that was corny. Number 2. Electronics in Mexico. You don't really associate Mexico with electronics, but a little-known fact is that Mexico has the 6th largest electronics industry in the world after China, United States, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Mexico is the 2nd largest exporter of electronics to the United States, where it exported $71.4 billion worth of electronics in 2011. Currently, electronics represent 30% of Mexico's exports. You might not see the electronics in your PCs, iPhones, and plasma televisions as being Mexican, since most do seem to have Japanese names. But take a look inside these little gadgets and you will see that many of the components that have made them work actually have tall sombreros and big mustaches. Take that, Japan! Also, Telmex, the nation's multinational Latin language conglomerate that provides content for most of Latin America, operates 120 satellites and utterly dominates the telecommunications industry for all of the Spanish-speaking world this side of the Atlantic. Yeah, lots of Spanish-speaking homes in the good old USA tune in to watch El Chavo de Ocho. Deal with it, Hollywood. Number 3. Automobiles in Mexico. There's a very good reason that Detroit does not manufacture cars any longer. It's called Mexico. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler have been operating in Mexico since the 1930s, while Volkswagen and Nissan built their plants in the 1960s. Cheap Mexican labor is the principal reason, but the Mexican government's clever way to look the other way when it comes to environmental and employees' rules and regulations in order to please Big Auto is another. Are you listening, Nikola Tesla? So yeah, traffic jams in Mexico City can last for months at a time, and the sky looks like something out of Dante's Inferno.
What the hell is this?
But hey, there is no lack of cheap labor, and nobody here is going to worry about turning rivers and lakes into oily mud puddles for the sake of progress. Number 4. People in Mexico. Mexicans are varied a lot. It is the 13th largest country in the world in terms of territory, and the 10th in terms of population, with over 120 million people representing most of the world's ethnicities, but also, and more importantly, 56 native ethnicities who still speak their original language. Although Spanish is the principal language spoken, the fact that languages like Nahua, Otomi, and Yaqui are still spoken speaks volumes of the resiliency of the natives against the Spanish onslaught. Still, Roman Catholicism still dominates, with 77% of the population being slavish to the church. Although Protestantism is rising steadily, taking an 11% of the faithful out of the fold of the Romans. Romantic, hot-blooded, and eternally macho, the typical Mexican is always willing to fight to defend what is his. Most Mexicans are mixed race, and the fact that most mestizos, as mixed-race Mexicans are known, came from the rape of indigenous girls by Spanish conquistadors is not lost on the Mexicans. Upper-class Mexicans are mostly descended from the Spanish and have made a strong effort to keep it that way. So, Mexican racism is strong, and although it is not institutionalized, it still prevails in many ways. Number 5. Economy in Mexico. There are 3 economic superpowers in the American continent: the USA, Brazil, and Mexico. Mexico is the USA's principal trading partner in the world, and also, sadly, a source of cheap, undocumented labor, which manages to keep the American dominion over the rest of the continent. Industry comprises 33% of the Mexican economy, with electronics and auto manufacturing being the strongest. Although never spoken and usually hidden from the mainstream, the second largest producer of wealth in Mexico is crime, particularly drug and people trafficking, with estimates between 15 and 30% of the GNP. The Mexican government denies these figures, but most serious Mexican economists agree. Tourism comes a hard third, with around 15%. The validity of these figures is always suspect, but certain facts are undeniable. Mexico has the 15th largest GDP in the world, with an estimated annual income of $4.5 trillion. Among the OECD countries, Mexico has the second highest degree of economic disparity between the extremely poor and extremely rich, after Chile. This is something that can be easily observed if you go to the city and then take a trip to some of the more isolated villages where people are still dying of hunger, have no running water or electricity, and are easy prey for the many cartels who use them as slave labor or worse. The fact that the oil industry belongs to the government and year after year has lost money, although Mexico is one of the principal producers of this slippery product, demonstrates easily the level of corruption that brings about this terrible income disparity. It's amazing how a nation so rich in natural resources can mismanage these resources to such an extent that Mexico has to buy gas from the USA when it sells oil to other nations. Number 6. Tourism in Mexico. From Wikipedia, we learned that, as of 2017, Mexico was the 6th most visited country in the world and had the 15th highest income from tourism in the world, which is also the highest in Latin America. What would spring break in 2020 mean in the USA without Cancun and Acapulco? Sadly, Corona-chan has dismantled much of what made Mexican tourism attractive, like being able to actually go out. Number 7. Sports in Mexico. The granddaddy of all sports in Mexico is the game of pelota, which was originally played by the Olmecs, but later on the Toltecs, Mayans, Oaxacans, and pretty much everybody, including, of course, Aztecs. It was similar to a mix of racquetball and basketball, with 2 teams having to score by pushing a rubber ball through a circular disc made of stone. The secret of the game, like so many other secrets, was lost when the Spanish put an end to the good times. It is said that the game, which was very much a ritual of some sort, claimed the lives of the losing team. Sounds like Squid Game. Surely, when the Martians colonize Earth, they will say the same thing about football. Modern-day Mexicans love soccer above all things, although our current president, Lopez Obrador, is a baseball fan, and he's built a stadium to promote the sport. Anyhow, Mexico hosted the 1968 Olympic Games, and a little-known fact about that is somehow these games led the Mexican government to commit one of the worst massacres in Mexican history, known as the Tlatelolco Massacre, when many students united to protest the games because of the accusations of corruption. This did not repeat when Mexico hosted the FIFA World Cup in 1970 and 1986. Predictably, Mexico is best at boxing, with 13 Olympic medals and a host of world champions. After soccer, in which Mexico has sadly never been a world champion, the two most popular sports are wrestling and bullfighting, which is still legal somehow. We did mention that Mexicans are hot-blooded, right? Number 8. The future of Mexico in 2022. Last but not least, there's an old saying in Mexico: "Poor Mexico, so far from God, so close to the United States." There's no denying that the future of Mexico depends profoundly on its relationship to the USA. To begin with, Mexico lost half of its territory during the Mexican-American War. About 5% of Mexico's GDP depends on money that Mexicans living in the USA send to their relatives back home. Between 15 to 30% of Mexico's GDP depends on drugs and other illegal products sold to Americans. So yeah, poor Mexico. But also a poor US of A. Mexicans living in Los Angeles, California are outnumbered only by those living in Mexico City. So the Mexican people have a huge say-so in American life, including the fact that most of the drugs Americans consume come from the Mexican cartels. Donald Trump's dream of a big wall was doomed to fail because Mexico and the USA are fast becoming one big country, due in part to the enormous economic impact they have on one another, but also due to the gigantic cultural history that has made Mexico the US's nervous little Chihuahua lapdog. Ask any Mexican who rules Mexico, and they will say unanimously, the USA. I, for one, dream of the day when Mexico becomes the 52nd state of the Union, or maybe 53, right after Canada. It is somehow inevitable. And oddly enough, if it ever happened, it would give Mexicans a huge advantage in negotiating with their northern neighbors, so the US would lose its last actual slave force, emancipating the Mexicans, who would now pick most of the oranges in California, build most of the homes in South Carolina, and sell most of the drugs in Chicago and Florida. But who knows, maybe China will take over Mexico before that. In that case, a Mexican-Chinese alliance might just recover California before it sinks in the ocean. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching my video. What do you think makes Mexico amazing? There was a significant amount of research, production, and exploring in Mexico that went into making this video possible. As this is a brand new YouTube channel I just started, if you enjoy videos like this, please click the subscribe button and hit that notification bell. If you haven't seen already, check out my video on what I wish I knew before moving to Mexico, or 8 reasons why you should leave Mexico now. As always, stay happy and healthy, and stay tuned for another episode of Company Insight next week.